Hey everyone, welcome to your online cafe. Hope everyone is having a nice weekend with your family. I know as I speak, I know there are some families out there who are struggling with some of their family members in COVID-19 situation. So a lot of my positive wishes, prayers, and positivity to all of them. I truly wish that they come out of it and they come out of it stronger. And then there is Diwali. Diwali is also right around the corner, but then the COVID doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So, we are all in these very challenging times where, on one hand, you do feel like doing something for Diwali, but at the same time, like I said, COVID is not going away. But I guess, you can't put your life to a halt. So I guess we need to be responsible and maybe cherish these festivities in our own little social bubble because we cannot let the virus put a halt to our own life, but at the same time create that balance of being responsible. Coming to your online cafe today, I know we have picked up a very challenging topic, but and a little complicated as well. But you would be surprised to know how many of the couples actually go through this dilemma when their marriage is falling apart. Staying in a marriage or because of the kids or leaving a marriage is the toughest call any parent can take because everybody wants to do the best for their kids. And there's enough research to show that yes, divorce does have a negative impact on the kids, but there is enough research to show also that most of the issues that stem in the kids actually occur uh, because of the conflict that happens before the breakup. So, it's a very, very tough call for a parent to take. And that's why we have picked up this topic because, sometimes you actually are in denial and you don't ask these tough questions to either yourself or to your spouse because, in our own cultural context, divorce is still not a very accepted norm. So couples sometimes they just struggle on their own, and so there's a lot of pressure. So we have Dr. Vimal with us, who's going to address some of the psychological issues related to this aspect of marriage. And like we've always said, that this does not pertain to any particular situation that a couple might be going through, but it's a broader conversation, it's a broader discussion. And I truly wanted to bring this to the table and ask some of the tough questions that sometimes we shy away from, but they're very important to address. So let me bring Dr. Vimal with us and let's move on with the show. One more thing, in the past, a few times, I have actually missed out on your questions that were sent to me on my WhatsApp. So from this time, I'm actually keeping my notifications on. So if you want to ask questions, by being anonymous, please WhatsApp it to me. I will not reveal the identity, but I will still ask the questions because I think utilize this platform, guys. This is all for you. We are bringing this topic so that some of the issues that you face on a daily basis can be addressed, and then it's your call whether you want to take it to another level, see a counselor. But please utilize this for in your own benefit, and please like, share, and subscribe my channel just_Sonal so that you're aware of the conversations that I'm bringing forth, and then you can be a part of the live conversation with us right here. Let me bring in Dr. Vimal and let's move on with the show.
Hi, Sonal.
Good to have you again.
Thank you for having me back again. I hope you had a good trip.
Oh, fantastic trip. So because I was in the mountains and I was in a very small village, uh, it looked like COVID doesn't exist because, they're so far away in their own little nest that they're living. And I just didn't feel like coming back, actually, honestly. And if I had the Wi-Fi, I would have done all my conversations on the mountain. So next time I'm going to make sure that I have the connectivity so that I can stay longer. So
Oh,
it
that's
was,
nice. Yeah.
it was beautiful. So, should we move on with our questions? I know we have, uh, you know, uh, a lot to talk about and a little. We are actually treading on a very complicated space today. I think.
Yes, yes. We'll try and do as much justice as we can. Our endeavor is to bring as much information to our viewers as possible, and um, by not by not getting into specifications, but like Sonal has already mentioned, this is a broad view on people out there who may be going through a situation like this.
Yeah. So let's start with the most obvious question in this. So if a marriage is not working out, if the differences are irreconcilable, what should the couple do? Should they stay in the marriage for their kids, or what is the answer for, because a lot of couples actually face this dilemma. So what is your opinion about that?
Hmm. Um, well, I think the decision to divorce, especially when children are involved, is one of the most difficult choices to make. And it doesn't matter whether it's a few years post marriage or many years post marriage. Divorce is not pretty, no matter when it happens. It is stressful to the lives of each spouse, their families, friends, and their children. At times, depending upon how the divorce proceeds, divorce tends to bring out the worst in people as well. There is hurt, anger, and resentment, bitterness, and these hard feelings take precedence over doing what is truly best for the kids. I encourage couples to do everything that they can to work out their own issues and challenge themselves to do the work to repair the marriage before choosing divorce. Such as, and when I say do the work, I mean go for counseling, individual counseling and couple counseling, read books, talk with friends and family if that's possible, work at it by maybe joining a support group. If if you know someone who's running a support group, or if there are a couple of people who are going through the similar situation, one can make their own support group and exchange ideas or exchange views on, or exchange experiences on what they're going through. A healthy marriage is the best for the children. However, there is no reason to believe, excuse me, that staying together at any cost is better for children than divorcing. In fact, when parents who are unhappy together and engage in unhealthy relationship habits, such as arguing, such as to save for the kids, like we are talking about today, it can often do more harm than good. And the behaviors the parents display in your home will set the stage for how your children will behave as adults, and how they are going to play that out in their relationship and adult relationships. It is not necessary that divorce itself determines whether, I mean, it's not only about the divorce. It's this is also about sending out psychological messages to the children as per the broader spectrum of relationships. Often, I hear people say things like, "But we don't do it in front of them," or "They don't really see what's going on. They never see us fight. We argue in the bedroom." Believe me, over the course of day in, day out, year after year, these messages accumulate and take root, and increases the likelihood that your kids will repeat in the very same patterns they have seen in their home growing up. So, when couples do decide to get divorced and they handle their divorce in a mature and collaborative way, there is plenty of reason to believe that the children can just be as fine in the long run. Um, Unhappy parents tend to raise unhappy children, and unhealthy relationships that stay together for the kids when the marriage is destructive tend to produce children who have unhealthy relationships as adults.
Right. Also, Dr. Vimal, I feel like if you choose to stay in a bad marriage where, the differences are just not being bridged, you are also giving a very bad example to the kids that the marriage is the end all for everything. Like that's the example you are setting up, that no matter, the marriage has to work, which I think is not a healthy psychological aspect for the kids. And I'm no a psychologist, but just from a this, I mean, that's just how what my perspective is, that
You're
they should all.
ab- absolutely, Sonal, because we take ourselves to the relationship the way we are. So it's not just about the marriage. Of course, marriage is a big question, but it's not just about that. It's way deeper, way broader, and has varying impacts on many aspects of the minds of children, not only about whether the parents stay together or not.
Now, in a situation where one of the spouse wants out of the marriage, and the other spouse actually wants to stay back in a marriage in spite of the marriage not working, how can that situation be handled then?
So the one spouse that doesn't want to exit the marriage, is it for the children, for the
For the
child, or
for the children, yes, yes. So
for the
one
child? Yeah,
spouse for the child, yeah.
right. So I think it's important to pay attention to the needs of both the partners. If one or both put their needs before the other, so I think there's a way of determining how. So let's look at this question in two categories. One is that the different factors which influence how the divorce may affect the child, and more and above that, I'd like to begin with saying that, so one person is in agreement, the other one is not. So primarily we need to begin from maybe establishing ground rules as to how they're going to come to a consensus whether they will proceed for divorce or not. And for that, I think that what are the emotional and psychological needs of both the partners, which have been met because they have been in the marriage, and some which have not been met. So, for example, if one or both partners begin to put their needs before the other person, when the blame game has no halt and has no end, when one or both the partners are consumed by resentment, and they don't see a way out of the stuckness of the bitterness that they are, the pool of bitterness that they are stuck in, when the marriage, if supposing a person is married to a psychopath, sociopath, or a narcissist, or if you or your partner are not willing to change, you know that this is the best I have done, I can't do anything more than that, then probably the more convinced partner needs to take the lead.
The more convinced partner, okay.
Yeah. Uh, for example, if one is married to a psychopath or a sociopath or a narcissist, it's then, I mean, one partner will not let go for whatever the reason may be. So the other partner needs to decide that I can take in so much and I won't take in anymore. Uh, so the question is about the children. So let's take a quick look at the different factors which influence how divorce would affect the children. So let's look at gender. Boys are more at risk than girls are. This is what some study papers and research has established
In terms of
in terms of the divorce affecting them.
the male child, the boys are more vulnerable than the girl
Yes,
child.
yes,
Okay,
yes. So if the parents decide to proceed for the divorce, or any one of the partners decide, and they have a male child, the male child is more at risk than a girl child, than a
okay.
female child.
And why is
Um,
that?
I don't know. That is what research has shown.
Okay, okay, that's a
Yeah.
nice.
Of course,
Please go.
for we need to go into the minds of men and how the brain of a male child develops to kind of understand that. But for now, let's just go with the findings.
Yeah, that's a possible space to tread on, I think. It's a
Yeah.
quite a mysterious space.
Yes. Isn't the mind of a man and a woman the most mysterious places to be?
I was just actually going to say that the men must be thinking is the other way around, and the women think is the other way around. So
Oh yes, yes.
that could
And
be
it's
complete.
hard to. There is no objective view on this. This is all about research and how they have run different studies and just found some mappings. So we are just going by whatever's established.
Yeah,
So age, moving on to age. So the younger children are more at risk because the loss of a parent that do not um, do not continue to live in the same home. And however, the toddlers or infant, people with infants, they 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 can make less sense of it. I mean, they can make sense, but it's like there is less memory. So it doesn't create as much turmoil because a child is still in their own world, establishing their own survival needs, meeting their own survival needs. And the socio-economic status, uh, divorce might change the standard of living, and so the less money means some of the children needs may not be met, and that may affect the child psychologically, psychologically, physically, and mentally, sorry, and emotionally. um, the relationship with each parent before the divorce and post the divorce, if it remains consistent, if the
right,
safety needs are met, and if the child still gets the due importance that he or she holds in both the parents, then it's not a problem. However, if the dynamics of either one of the parents change, that may affect the child.
right.
And lastly, the degree to which the child is involved in the marital conflict. For example, um, if the child is used or experiences or witnesses um, consistent parental conflicts, he or she is more likely to have an emotional problem, anxiety problem, or some form of lack of decision making, assertiveness, all of that. But if these things can be handled, like I mentioned earlier, in a collaborative manner, then these problems can be avoided.
Okay. So, see, it appears like, well, once a couple has decided to reach that separation mode, I think it's the process that matters more than the divorce itself, right? The process followed. If it's an amicable one, I think the impact is lower. Then, so I'll come to that question later. When would a couple know? That's another a very common dilemma that a lot of couples go through is when to pull the plug. Like when do they know that the marriage is over and it's better for them, it's better for the kids to just part ways.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question. um, the resilience and the adaptation quotient of each person decides the readiness for divorce, and that is quite individual. When the pain begins to feel unbearable and one begins to observe that he or she is becoming or turning into a person that they don't want to be, and they don't want to become, and they don't want to continue becoming that person, um, feels suffocated, that is pretty much the beginning of the readiness of pulling the plug. However, some of the questions one can ask oneself to determine readiness for divorce could be: what was your marriage like when it worked? um, and when did it go wrong, and why, how, and is what is not working in the marriage about a third person, like an extramarital affair or mother-in-law or joint family system or some other person, could be the girl's parents also. So it's worth exploring uh, why, how, what, and when have things started going wrong.
Okay.
One of the other questions one can ask is what you're fighting about worth breaking up your marriage? And is it worth the cost of a relationship? Nobody walks into a marriage thinking that they're going to walk off, or that this is going to end someday. Nobody does that. So pretty much most people, especially in our culture, walk into the marriage thinking that this is going to change the trajectory of the rest of my life, whether it's male, female, regardless of gender, social strata, education, financial background, all of that. So it's important to ask, what is it that we are fighting about? And the third question one can ask is, um, not enough to say, it's not enough to say that I don't want the marriage because it's not working, because we are fighting, we're quarreling, and we just don't get along. We don't have common interests, so we don't seem to see in the same direction anymore. It's also very important to know what you really do want. If you do decide you don't want this, but what is it that you really want? You don't want to regret later, 2 years down after you have divorced, that, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Right.
Question number 4 is, are you willing? Are both? I mean, are you willing? Meaning, are both the partners willing to put in the effort to make the relationship work at any cost? If this relationship is important, am I willing to do a little bit more? Am I willing to challenge myself a little bit more to make it work? And what are you doing to contaminate the relationship? What are you doing to what role are you playing in keeping the relationship stuck in the place that it is? Because not all relationships keep going bad. They reach a certain level of no connection, no emotional connection, and then they remain the same way.
Right.
So here, so I'm just trying to point out that there are two ways to look at it. One, we look at the relationships which continuously go south, the others which have gone south but have plateaued. And two more questions to ask, which might help to ask, are you ready to explore new ways of engaging with your children? And are you willing to create a new relationship as a co-parent? Because one person will leave, and like I said, to minimize the psychological impact on the child, there needs to be a new relationship as a co-parent in the most non-threatening way to the for the child.
Right. So talking about that, Dr. Vimal, since the whole focus is kids in this particular conversation, kids. I mean, we are relating the divorce, separation, and the kids' psychology. What are some of the psychological needs of the kids actually? What is required for their well-being? Because once we know that aspect, then I guess it's easier to address the rest of the things that you are able to bring to the table and not able to bring to the table. So, what are their psychological needs actually?
Yeah. Um, Children may experience heightened emotional and psychological needs post divorce, during divorce, when they hear about divorce the first time, such as fear, confusion, sadness. Actually, fear tops the list, and there is confusion and sadness because there is There is uncertainty attached to divorce, and the fear is number one because as a result of this massive change in their lives, and that kind of a change can be quite threatening for the child. So, to make the transition easy for the children, parents need to keep some of the psychological needs of a child in mind, the key needs, and that may help to facilitate a more peaceful settlement or a more peaceful separation. The prime need of a child, as like adults as well, is acceptance. So, children need to feel accepted and acknowledged and appreciated by both the parents. The blame and hostility should not be passed on to the children. The child does not want to hear that the divorce is happening because of them, or the parent may say, "I'm doing it because I want betterment for you." No, they don't want to hear anything against the other parent, because for a child, both parents are equal.
Yeah.
Um, During a divorce, a child's self concept and sense of belonging is more fragile than normal. So, if acceptance can be looked after and made more explicit, like in the conversations that both the parents have with the children, it would really help to make the child feel wanted, and like no matter what the parents go through, but the child will remain as important as the child has always been, and as important as the child would like to feel in the lives of both the partners, both the parents. Another child need is the assurance of safety, and although the family is going through a major change, the child need the children need to know and feel like they are still protected and deeply cared for. So, in the conversation that parents have with their children, if both parents assure the child that the child will remain safe no matter what the parents are deciding, or changing homes, the child's safety will not be compromised in any way. That ensures the child to feel safe. Yet another need is for the need for structure, because the child goes to school, participates in extracurricular activities, and so on and so forth. So while the family structure is falling apart, a child needs assurance and routines to help ease the divorce process. So if the routines are made, if the classes are not missed, and or relocated, they need to feel the same care, love, and support that they're normally used to. That would minimize the change for them, and it would help them to feel that the structure remains. And structure also reinforces security and safety, because it comes from continuity and normality. Um, Yet one of the other needs is to let the kids remain kids. The kids are not responsible for the divorce of the children. Sorry, the divorce of the parents. The children cannot be placed in the middle of a divorce. They should not be given the job of healing your pain, or nor should they have to deal with the adult issues and the stress. And also, sometimes when grandparents tend to say things like, आपको पता नहीं है आपकी मम्मी कितनी परेशान है, or don't you know your dad's has a lot to handle. That's not a child's responsibility to figure out. So, it's very important to let the child be a child. This is regardless of gender.
Yeah. Right. I've actually gotten two questions on my WhatsApp, Dr. Vimal. One is around the process. Somebody's asking that once you do decide to take on that plunge, what is the process that needs to be followed so that there is a minimum impact on the kids? The psychological impact on the kids. I think some of it you've already answered in this.
Yeah. I can elaborate on this. It's a very good question. So we can thank the viewer who asked this question. Divorce occurs in six phases. So it begins with emotional divorce, which is when the positive feelings of love and affection are displaced by feelings of anger, hurt, resentment, bitterness, dislike, um, and the couple begins to believe that the positive feelings are never going to return. And the second phase is the legal divorce, when it involves the legal. So once the couple decides that they have to proceed, then the legal documentation that the couple is no longer married to each other, and that's a whole process in itself. It is not overnight. The decision to divorce is usually built over time. The decision to separate is also built over time. It is not anything that transitions overnight. So that's just something that I'd like the viewers to be aware of. The third phase of divorce is the co-parental divorce, which is deals with custody, single parent homes, and visitation rights. This is also a very emotional part of the divorcing process, because one parent may want something, and it also gives it gives pathway to a lot more conflict. Community divorce, because it that's the fourth phase, which involves the changes of friends, community, sometimes also dislocating cities. The fifth phase is the psychic divorce, which means that divorcing people should adjust to live alone. And living alone is very different from living together. And though it sounds very simple, but getting used to living alone is a process in itself, and that is why it's a phase. Sixth is the economy. It is related to money, property division, assets between the two people. By assets, I mean jewelry and other valuables. Sometimes this is the most volatile phase of divorce. If it is not mutual, then it can be pretty volatile, and this can hurt the adults as well as children as well. So, some of the things that you can do to ease it for the child is to put your children's needs first, before yours, and this requires a certain amount of awareness and a certain amount of clarity, which is hard to find when one is going through so much oneself. And this is where counseling helps. Communicate clearly with your children, and be as truthful as possible. Like, tell them what is happening, inform them about what you're going to do. Let it not be a surprise. Communicate with your ex-husband or ex-wife regarding the child rearing decisions, such as if the child is doing well in school, or if there is some change happening in school or in extracurricular activities. So engage the other parent, because remember, the for the child, both the parents are equal. So you may have your own differences with the partner, but make sure that the child does not feel that division. Decide that your children will not come from a broken home, and so that will come out in your vocabulary, because once you make that decision, um, you can tell them that they're going to have two homes. So that expands and makes it a positive message rather than saying, "Oh, now you're you know now you belong to a broken home and a dysfunctional family." Agree on behavioral guidelines and boundaries, um, such as when the child. So for it, I'll give you an example in this. So when the child goes and stays with the other parent, one of the guidelines could be that supposing the other parent is involved with another person, the child does not need to witness that. So visitation could have some behavioral guidelines and boundaries. There could be certain activities that may not be permissible by one of the parents, and so it's best that both the parents come into agreement and make the guidelines and boundaries before the child goes visiting one parent, the other parent, apart from the one that he or she is staying with. So, and some of the things I'd like to mention here is what not to do during the divorce. So, I think I also already mentioned a couple, but and so I'll begin with not to put your children in the middle of the divorce, not to sabotage your child's relationship with the other parent, not to undermine the other parent. Don't tell the child that the other parent is not good enough, or they have anger issues and they lie a lot. The child does not need all this information. Don't fight in front of your children, and don't use your child as a pawn to get back at or hurt the other, or hurt the partner, because in some relationships where the anger and resentment hasn't settled, very often children are used as an excuse to hurt the other partner, and the child knows that they're being used.
That's right. So, it appears like how a couple actually handles a divorce before and after is the most important thing if you do take that call. I think that's where the most psychological either damage or acceptance, like you said. Once we take the responsibility of taking the plunge, we have an equal responsibility to make sure that we do it in a way that is the least psychological impacting to the kids. And I think for that you need two mature adults to handle it. Sometimes, see, that's the thing, right? If you have two such mature adults, the chances are you're never going to reach that space where you want a divorce. Irony of it, but I think it is what it is. I have one more question, which viewer is asking that are there positivity, are there any positive aspects to a divorce? And if yes, what are they? I just want to quickly mention this to the viewers that the assumption here is that marriage is not working. So that we don't wonder. We are not here promoting anything, but the underlying assumption of this conversation is that you've reached a point where it's not reconcilable anymore. So anyway, going back to the question, the viewer is asking that is there any positive aspect to a divorce? If yes, then what?
Thank you for saying that, Sonal, because I was going to say the exact same thing, that we are not promoting divorce. And, you know, we are promoting a healthy relationship, because the series is on relationships. And I had begun, when Sonal asked the first question, I had begun by saying that leave no rock unturned to make the relationship work.
Right.
Yeah. So the positive effects. Um, yes, there are positive effects. The positive one of the most profound positive effects is the decision making, because when the parents or a parent decides to put an end to the suffering, to the pain, to the anger, the resentment that is building up in a relationship, um, I think it also is. The flip side is that it builds respect for the other partner, because you are letting go of the other person to prevent more venom to pour into the relationship. And when the child witnesses this, it may not be the prettiest experience to go through, but the psychological message is that that they find is to own responsibility in a relationship, and then don't live with a mistake, own it to change it.
Yeah,
So that's one
absolutely.
of the most profound positive effects on it has. And if viewers want to read up on more, there are research papers that you can look for, which they it's very interesting the way they have gone about finding the findings that they have found, and established certain positive effects of children. They give you the percentages, and also the different cultures that they have conducted the study in. uh, the other positive effects are like setting healthy boundaries in adult relationships. When the parent is deciding to do that, I think they are setting an example and also giving the child the permission that when the child is an adult, they have the permission to set healthy boundaries, which prevents abuse of any kind. And because conflict, I think Sonal had mentioned earlier that conflict does more harm to a child than divorce does.
Yeah,
To remain in a relationship which is continuously conflicting and volatile will end up harming the child more than the divorce process. And lastly, this again refers to a segment only, not to a large segment, but a pretty a significant segment, which is if there is alcoholism, if there is pathological lying, if there is physical, by physical I mean domestic violence, financial or verbal abuse, or financial and verbal abuse, and the other partner continues to bear with it for the sake of remaining married, and for the sake of remaining married for the children, that would end up doing more harm. So this has a positive effect because it sets ground for the children to pick up unhealthy and inconsiderate behavior,
yeah,
to be not okay,
yeah,
and to make a decision around it,
yeah,
and also to know where to draw the line and when to stop.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things, Vimal, especially in an Indian context, that I feel is also very important to bring it up since we're talking about divorce and separation is that you know some of the very obvious reasons which you mentioned, you know, they're very obvious that if you are in an abusive relationship, there's violence, if there's cheating, but a lot of times what happens is none of those exist, right? It could just be that two good people are in a bad marriage.
Hmm.
Those are the times when it's the toughest call to make, and you actually keep stretching the marriage beyond its expiry, I guess, because that's when it's even more difficult to take that call. If you have something very obvious, then at least you know the reasons. In a lot of marriages, I feel like it could just be that it's just not working for so many other reasons in spite of two good people being in a marriage, and that's when I guess
Yes.
it's
I totally agree with you, because, and that is why I think it wasn't very long ago when the law came up with filing for divorce on the grounds of incompatibility. Because for many, many, many years, um, there was no such ground rule for to file for divorce based on incompatibility, like, which means different personalities, or coming from different cultures, and they're just not able to get along, but they're both good people.
yeah, yeah. I have a question here. Actually, I think in India you still don't have that incompatibility as a reason. From what I understand, that is still not a reason. But anyway, that's a completely different segment, and it's not a part of the conversation. I have a question from Nikki Gal. He's saying, "Hi, please suggest that is 13 years of of age gap okay between couples? He's saying, I know that he's out of context, but please guide.
um, 13 years of age gap between couples, in the sense that I'm assuming it's between the two partners to get married.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I don't think the compatibility has to do with the number of years apart. I feel that it has more to do with planning. Let me make this really simple. Plan your 10th anniversary, don't plan your wedding day. If you think that you can make it in the marriage to your 10th or maybe 11th, 12th anniversary, that would be the way to decide whether it's okay for you or not.
So that means if you can see yourself being with that person for the next 10 years in terms of your compatibility, then you go ahead and age gap actually doesn't matter. But in terms of compatibility, if you feel that you're not going to be together till that time, but a lot of time, Dr. Vimal, you don't know, right? We never go into a marriage thinking that that's going to happen,
Yeah.
uh, right? But
With relationships, every relationship comes with a risk. So even parents we are born to, siblings that we are born into, joint
right.
family systems, where we grow up, every relationship comes with a certain amount of risk. So that is a given. The rest is something that one can work out. It doesn't mean that you may not make a mistake, but individuals need to decide for themselves whether they really want to take the plunge, and would it be okay if they make that mistake, which is fine. Making mistakes is not
It's okay.
something which is forbidden. It's a good thing.
So I guess Nikki, I hope you got your answer. Dr. Vimal is saying that I don't think age difference matters. It's your compatibility to the person is what matters the most actually in any relationship. I have let me just quickly. I don't think I have any more questions either from the audience or myself. Yeah. I think I've pretty much covered everything that I had. Dr. Vimal, if you have anything to say, please add on. Otherwise, I'm going to just go ahead and wrap up the show. And I have a few quick announcements before I do that.
Okay, I quickly just want to say that when the last question that came up just gets me thinking that if you have specific questions like that, um, and before you take the plunge to whether to buy, whether to go forward with a commitment or to go forward with a commitment to break up, seek help. Go get clarity of your mind. Encourage your partner to do the same.
I think in any relationship, you should at least give it your best and the best and a little bit more. So that if you ever take a call, if you ever look back, you don't regret that, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. So I think once you are standing that ground, I think it's going to be fine. I have, so me and Dr. Vimal will be taking a break for the next 2 weeks. So we will not be able to do your online cafe for the next 2 Sundays, but we will be back on the third week of November. So after today, we will actually see you uh, November 21st, I think, if I'm right. But I will be back with the Blue Mug chat with something very, very interesting in the next 2 Thursdays. So I look forward to being with you. Thank you for joining us. This is just Sonal signing off. Bye. Bye. Bye, Dr. Vimal. See
Bye.
you.
Bye.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Happy Diwali.
Yes. Oh, yes. Happy Diwali to all my viewers. But I will, I'm going to be seeing you before Diwali. So I will then wish all of you then. But yes, Dr. Vimal, you will not see her.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yep.
right.
Have a safe Diwali. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.